Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Minnesota Ovarian Cancer Alliance's Living Well meeting, Staying Active During Your Cancer Journey. I am Stephanie Gliniani, MOCA's Community Support Program Manager. We are so glad that you are here with us this evening for this live presentation. Tonight, we will be exploring how movement impacts our physical and emotional health, and also find ways to add more movement into our lives, no matter how active you are right now. I do want to encourage all of you to ask questions via the chat or question box during the presentation. After the presentation, these will be answered during our Q&A session at the end. Before we begin, I do want to invite you to MOCA's first Lunch and Learn program, Writing for Wellness, which is going to take place on Wednesday, March 24th, over the noon hour from noon to 1 p.m. Our Lunch and Learn programs are really interactive sessions designed to help us take charge of our health. These Lunch and Learns are a little different than these Living Well meetings because you can choose to share your camera and interact with each other if you would like. You can sign up for this free program at mnovarian.org. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker tonight, Danielle Johnson. And Danielle is a physical therapist with the Mayo Clinic's Healthy Living program, a certified fitness specialist, and the daughter of an ovarian cancer survivor. Thank you so much for being here with us, Danielle.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be here tonight and have this discussion with all of you. So thank you so much for having me with you tonight.
Thank you. I know before we get started, I do want to share with everyone that Danielle has created a handout that is available for all of our attendees, and we will be posting this all on our website for you as well. Before we get started and before I hand off, we are going to launch a few polls just so we can learn a little bit about who is in the audience with us tonight. So this first poll, please tell us just a bit about yourself. Are you a cancer survivor? Are you a family member or a loved one, a friend, a healthcare provider, or other? We're just excited that you're all with us tonight, and we'll give you guys a second to see who's with us. And this will really help kind of guide Danielle to share information that is the most relevant to you. So we'll give you guys a second for those to come up. Wonderful. So 83% are cancer survivors, and we have a good amount of family members and friends. So thank you guys for being here with us this evening. Now our next question, we want to know where you're joining us from. Are you here in Minnesota? Are you in one of the surrounding states, which we know that we have a lot of people that we serve, you know, in Wisconsin, North Dakota, Iowa, or other. You might be maybe in sunny Florida right now. The one benefit to virtual meetings is you can really be joining us from anywhere. So we would love to see where you're from tonight. Okay, good. So most people are, looks like most are from Minnesota, some Wisconsin, and other. So no matter where you are, thanks for being with us. And we do have one final question. Our last question is, how active would you say that you are right now? Very active, somewhat active, active, or not very active? And I will just share that no matter where you are, we are going to meet you where you are at. And I know that Danielle has some really great exercises and movements to share with everyone that you can do at home or at work. So no matter where you are, we are here and excited to learn with you. So we'll give everyone a second for that. Okay, great. We have a good mix of where people are at, right, Danielle? This is wonderful.
Yeah, great. I'm excited. Thank you, everybody, for doing this. This gives me a lot to go on because I want this to be a very personal journey for you, too.
Great. So with that, I know you are excited to start, so I am going to let you take it from here, and we will have a Q&A after you are done with your presentation. So I will let you take it away.
So once again, I would love to just say thank you. Thank you for being here with me tonight to talk about staying active during your cancer journey. I'm very, very excited to be here with you and feel very grateful to have this opportunity to speak to you. So during our journey tonight and our discussion, I'm hoping that we can learn a lot. Part of what I'm hoping we can learn is really understanding the benefits of activity during your cancer journey, knowing the recommended guidelines, understanding ways to implement activity into your life, understand the precautions and red flags, and knowing your resources so that far and beyond this conversation, you know where to look for answers. So these are just some of the things that I'm hoping we get tonight. But before we get down to the nitty-gritty of our discussion about activity, I wanted to talk a little bit about the story of cancer as I know it today. This is a really great representation of my education and working with cancer patients. The top of this iceberg is sort of what I knew from learning in books and what I learned in the clinic working with cancer patients. The lower part of this iceberg is really what I've learned in the past 2 years. 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Our lives changed vastly in the last 2 years, and my understanding of living with cancer, what that really means to go through that journey, that education was just as profound as anything that I had learned in books. So we have a lot of survivors with us tonight. Most of you are survivors. As the daughter of a very active ovarian cancer survivor, my understanding of how to work with cancer patients vastly changed because of that experience. What did I learn that I didn't know? Well, fighting cancer is a lot more than physical. There are a lot of things that go into fighting cancer that I didn't necessarily understand as a clinical practitioner who hadn't walked through this journey with somebody that I love. There are so many things that are affected when you're fighting cancer. After your surgery, there's a lot of things that go on with body image, fatigue. Chemotherapy just racks the body. My mom had a lot of issues with fatigue, depression, anxiety. You don't know what your future holds. You don't have a lot of control. And social isolation, because as well-meaning as our friends and family are, sometimes they just don't know what to say. And that can make us feel like nobody is around to support us. So there are so many things going on under the surface that my experience with my mom in the last 2 years, I'm grateful for. It's made me a much better practitioner. The great news is that we know that activity can help with all of those things. We have decreased depression, decreased anxiety, improved self-esteem and body image. Our cognitive function improves because we're getting more activation of our frontal lobe. Socialization, so those opportunities where people aren't quite sure what to say, socialization opportunities with activity can be profound. I know that that meant a lot to my mom because when she was on the tennis court, as you can see in this photo, she was Barb. She wasn't an ovarian cancer survivor. She was Barb playing tennis, something that she had done all her life. And that was very empowering to her. She had a sense of control that she didn't otherwise have. So activity can be profound in making us feel more like ourselves again. This picture I adore. This is my mom and I. She had been talking about her tennis ladies for a very long time, and they are a very special group of ladies. But one morning I got up at 3 a.m., drove the 5 hours to Longville, and was on the tennis court to play with these ladies by 8 a.m. And as much as an athlete that I believe myself to be, these ladies, they took it to me. I was not going to stand a chance with these ladies, and it was amazing to see my mom in her element. Activity brings people together. Additional benefits of activity, again, preventing deconditioning, which can be a huge problem, especially after surgery, reducing fatigue, improving function, reducing muscle atrophy that can happen when we become deconditioned and we don't move as much as we did before. Bone health is something that's extremely important, especially for females, and especially for females with cancer who go through cancer treatments, because it can have a profound effect on bone density. It lowers the risk of blood clots, but one of the most profound benefits of physical activity that we see is that we actually have improved treatment outcomes. Study after study after study suggests that physically active cancer survivors have a lower risk of reoccurrence, and they actually have an improved survival rate compared with those who are inactive. So the evidence is quite clear. The data is large. Cancer survivors benefit from activity. So the real question is, how do we do it correctly? So I'm going to formulate for you a timeline, and I'm hoping to convince all of you that activity belongs at every stage along the continuum of care, that activity has benefits all along all of these stages and really should be thought of as part of your treatment plan, not necessarily an adjunct to what you're doing chemically, surgically. Really, because of the studies that have been done and the effects that we know are there and the benefits, this is something that should be considered part of your treatment plan. And that treatment plan with activity begins with something that we call prehab. Prehab is really between diagnosis and treatment. So you maybe haven't had your surgery yet. You are getting ready to go down that treatment pathway. And the reason why this is paramount is we know with lots and lots of studies that prehab with almost any diagnosis, doing a meeting with a physical therapist prior to treatment has a lot of benefit after treatment begins. In that session, the physical therapist would do an activity and functional baseline, so we know where you are before treatment begins. Because a lot of the treatments that you may undergo for ovarian cancer can cause issues with sensation and balance, such as neuropathy, we would love to get a baseline of your sensation, your balance before you begin. Or there are other comorbidities that could make it difficult for you to get back to your baseline of function. We want to know that, and we want that documented so we know how to help you. Pelvic floor, deep core, breath work, really talking about what activity can do for you. All of those things are something that can happen in this stage that we know has great benefit down the line. Treatment phase 1. This is what I've coined this stage. Treatment has begun. This is the stage that you're in after you've had your surgery. You're possibly still in the hospital. PT will come in and they will start helping you do functional activities, getting out of bed, on and off the toilet, walking in the hospital. These are all paramount and very important activities to do. This is one of my favorite photos of my mom. This is after a bowel obstruction that she had, and she was feeling pretty low. One thing for her, and you know, talking with support people here tonight, family and friends, for her, the encouragement to get up and move around after her surgery really helped her quite a bit. And the mood change in her from being pretty upset, getting up and moving and having her family around her was very, very important in that stage. Treatment phase 2, you are out of the hospital, you've possibly started chemotherapy, this is where we may start noticing some issues with neuropathy, balance. You possibly are very deconditioned after your surgery because you couldn't move the way you wanted to. You have fatigue that's set in. So this is a stage where we want to begin building up your stamina and your energy. And survivorship. This is where we're going to spend most of our time tonight, is talking about how do we get a plan implemented in this stage. Really what we're looking at with this is building back to your prior level of function. And that's why, again, going back to prehab, we talked about in prehab, what are you doing? Where are you at? We want you to get back to that level. This is health and wellness focused. So this is really focusing on enjoyment, emotional support, having you regain some control over something in your life in an area where you may not feel like you have a lot of control. So it's really, really coming together and getting you back to where you want to be. We're going to talk a little bit about, in this stage, something called the ACSM guidelines. Those are the American College of Sports Medicine guidelines. And that's going to help guide where we need to go with this stage of activity. Lastly, palliative care. We know that activity has a strong need, even in this phase, to keep our function, to keep us safe, keep us independent, prevent falls. So this is a very important stage as well. So I'm hoping now you can kind of see how we're building the evidence that activity needs to be a part of your treatment plan and really has very important implications in every single step along the way. But I would like to take a little closer look at that stage of survivorship. And I think it was something like 82% of you here tonight are survivors. So this is the stage that we're really going to focus on for you. So going back to those ACSM guidelines, this is the American College of Sports Medicine. This slide, what you are seeing is these are the recommended guidelines for the general adult population. So there's guidelines for cardiovascular work, resistance training, mobility training, balance training, and they're all laid out here for you. And this again is for the general adult population. This is the American College of Sports Medicine's recommended guidelines for cancer survivors. I'm going to give you just a minute or so to take a look and see what you can notice about this slide compared to the last one. You may already have picked it up. It's exactly the same. So we are recommending, the American College of Sports Medicine is recommending that your activity guidelines are exactly the same as what is recommended for the adult population. And that includes 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate cardiovascular exercise, or 75 to 150 minutes per week of vigorous exercise, resistance training, mobility training, balance training, all 2 to 3 days a week. So that's sometimes seen in that format, in that diagram. Sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, that's so much. Where do I begin? This is a great conversation that I just had with an amazing stage 4 breast cancer survivor. She was a highly active individual previously to her breast cancer. She wanted to get back to that, but she knew that she wasn't the same as she was before. So her question to me was, I see all of these pieces. I understand that they're all important, but I don't know where to begin. It feels overwhelming. So the first thing that I told her, and the first thing that I'm going to tell all of you tonight, is that it all counts. So I think our society is fed this information that if you're not at the gym for 60 minutes every day, and you're not looking like you're just about ready to flop on the mat when you're done, that it doesn't count. But I'm here to tell you that from a health perspective, it all counts. So everything that you are doing throughout your day, it all counts. And we're going to talk about how when you're first getting back into it, and you may still have ramifications of fatigue or deconditioning, breaking exercise up throughout the day and looking at how you're organizing that activity can go a long way to helping moderate your fatigue and really making this a much more successful plan. The other thing is there's research coming out recently that suggests that moving throughout the day rather than at one time and then sitting throughout the day is actually much more beneficial. So we're going to talk about all of that as we look at the specifics. So again, when people are coming out of treatment, they may have some issues with fatigue. They may not move the way that they used to. And they ask me, Danny, I haven't really done anything consistently, and I'm not quite sure where to begin. I sometimes direct them to mobility and balance as a place to begin, because mobility and balance is the very base and foundation upon which all other movements are built upon. If you cannot move well, and you cannot move without pain, without dysfunction, then you really should not be loading your body up with a lot of other things. So sometimes if you haven't begun your exercise journey or your activity journey, this can be a really important place to start. We know that it's important to move well, but we also know that some of the treatment options for ovarian cancer can leave us with neuropathy and balance difficulties. So balance exercises in the literature, including things like Tai Chi and yoga, have been proven to really reduce our risk of falls. So they are a really beneficial activity to start with. Traditional stretches are great. I personally love something called functional mobility and balance, which includes things like deep squatting, getting down onto the floor. Getting down and up off of the floor is a very functional activity that actually has a lot of ramifications for safety. So working on getting up and down off the floor, getting your body used to moving on a consistent basis. And you're going to hear me use that word a lot. Consistency is key. So we want to move, and we want to move often. Cardiovascular training is sort of that next piece of the puzzle. So once you get your body moving well, you feel confident, you feel safe moving your body, cardiovascular is sort of that next level. So you may remember that the ACSM guidelines for cardiovascular exercise is 150 to 300 minutes of moderate exercise per week, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous exercise per week. Again, benefits are profound. These are ones you all probably are familiar with. You may be more familiar with the improved health measures that you get from cardiovascular, but we know that it also helps improve mood, decrease depression, helps with anxiety, helps improve sleep, and all of these things can be heightened in this stage of survivorship, because you may or may not really feel like you have a lot of control. So implementing some of these exercises can really, really help with mood as well. So we are going to take a little closer look, because the next question I usually get is, well, Danny, I'm not really sure what moderate exercise is and what vigorous exercise is. So how do I know what I'm doing and if I'm doing the right thing? So here's how you know. Moderate activities, it's probably hard to sing your favorite song, but you can talk with your friend. You do have increased breath rate. You do have an increased heart rate. You are doing something like brisk walking, biking, housework, gardening, all of those great activities. This scale that you see next, this 4 to 6 out of 10 RPE, RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Moderate exercise is on a scale of 0 to 10. Moderate is you're working about a 4 to 6. So you're working, you can feel it, but you're not unable to carry on a conversation with your friend. We look at vigorous activities. you don't really want to converse with your friend. You sort of want to give your friend the wave off and tell them to come back later. You're using large muscle groups, you're working hard. Now you're working up in that 7 to 9 out of 10 range. If you're looking for more examples on what these two activities activity levels entail, the cdc.gov is a website that's going to be in my resources coming up, but that has some great examples of the different types of activities as well. So, rate of perceived exertion. This is a great tool to use if you're not using a heart rate monitor or familiar with heart rates. You can gauge where you are on the moderate to vigorous using this rate of perceived exertion. At Mayo Clinic, we use a scale that goes from 6 to 20. That relates to your heart rate. But we found that that's a little bit hard for people to judge where they are. 6 to 20 doesn't really mean a lot for people. So Cleveland Clinic came up with a 0 to 10 scale that is a little bit more understandable for people. And that's the scale that I listed on my slides. And this PDF will be uploaded so you guys can go back and use this as a reference point as well. This picture I love. This is actually a MOCA Mayo Clinic sponsored race called Unleash the She. This is where our family was first introduced to staff of MOCA. So we are very thankful for this event. I don't really like running. We're going to talk about liking your activity that you choose in a minute. I don't like running, but I ran as a tribute to my mom because she's a lifelong runner. The little secret was the first time I ever put on my running shoes and actually ran was at this race. So that was kind of funny. But kudos to my mom, who is a lifelong runner. It's just not for me. All right, now we've got your flexibility, mobility, and remember, consistency is the key. So as you start adding these pieces, you're not taking pieces away. You're still doing your mobility, your balance training, you're doing your cardiovascular piece, and now you're going to add some resistance training. Resistance training is an amazing adjunct to your program. It has vast benefits, including all of these things listed here: bone health, balance, body composition, metabolism, independence. But we also know from lots and lots of research that this also helps with mood and anxiety and depression. So this is a really great place to start. The one caveat that I will say, as I will reiterate with all of these types of activities, is that you want to include your care team with any of these activities. If you haven't done them before, you need to check with your care team. The resistance training, if you haven't done that before, this is an area where you should seek professional guidance. There are some ramifications with bone density. If you have issues with osteopenia or osteoporosis, we do want you to proceed with caution. And that's an area that you need to talk with your physician about. And then you definitely, if that is part of your medical history, you need to talk with a physical therapist, somebody in the field that can help guide you through that. There are some precautions that we will want you to observe. So definitely speak with a professional, but there are profound benefits of resistance training. So we've gone through the ACSM guidelines. We've talked about all the different pieces, but how do we make that a success? And this is really the crux of it. And what I'm going to tell you is not necessarily something that's well known, but it is well researched. The fact of the matter is, exercising for a health condition, that alone, we know from the research, may help you get started. It'll motivate you, but it won't keep you going long term. There needs to be some immediate gratification that you get from that activity that makes it feel beneficial. And that's all part of having a plan. I really recommend to most of my patients that they do some sort of journal, an activity journal. They look at their week, they write down what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, And they then go back afterwards and write how they felt. I felt really strong today. I felt really great talking to Barb today on the tennis court. That was so fun. So writing down what you loved about that activity can go a really long way at keeping you going long term. Having a plan, writing it down, it's very, very important. Okay, so MOCA and I have loaded some exercises onto their website because, as we talked about earlier, everything counts. And I am a huge proponent of breaking activities up, especially if you're just getting started and your energy levels may not be where you want them to be. Breaking that activity up really can go a long way at getting you closer to those recommended guidelines, but preserving your energy so that you can enjoy the rest of the things throughout your day. Again, always discuss with your healthcare provider before doing any new exercise. But these are some examples of something that's available for you on the MOCA site. So I'm going to play this for you. You'll notice that I'm moving very slow. That's because my internet is not good. But normally when you see these on the MOCA site, they will move much faster. But these are all done with a chair. They're all done so that they can be done if there's any neuropathies or balance problems, you have something to hang on to. One tip with these would be that as your balance improves, if you can see where my fingers are on the top of that chair, you can lift your hands just a little bit. So you can practice a little bit of balance at the same time as doing some of these. There's a few full body exercises, stretching that are really, really good to help with our mobility. But again, you do want to talk with your care team about that before you begin. So let's recap a little bit. Grandma Barb's ready. Are you? So ready, set, success. Let's review a little bit. Number one, we're keeping your care team in the loop. Whenever you start a new exercise, whenever you're ready for the next level, your care team is there for you. It is not a bother to call one of your care team. I know I love to hear from all of my patients if they have any questions or concerns at all. So please call. Progress as you feel comfortable. And this is really, really important, especially depending on where you are in your stage of survivorship. Are you right out from your chemotherapy? Is fatigue a huge factor? You want to progress as you feel comfortable. This is a journey. You may not be ready to go back to where you were previously right away. You may have to build, and that takes time. So please be patient with yourself. Build a good foundation. And again, sometimes the best place to start that good foundation is mobility and balance. Aim to follow those ACSM guidelines, but do it in a way that works for you. So if you need to break it up throughout your day, that's amazing and that's perfectly appropriate, and the health benefits will still be profound. Consistency is key. Again, consistency. So have a plan. Mark down when, mark down what, mark down how, so that you fully understand exactly what you are dealing with during your week. If you have something happen, have a plan B. If I can't get to the gym, I'm going to do these exercises in my house. I'm going to do the exercises that Danny has on the MOCA site, perhaps. So it's always good to have a backup plan. Do something you like. This is very important. Again, what we know from the research is that long-term success comes from doing something that you get some sort of immediate gratification from and making it part of your priorities. We know that if it's competing with priorities such as work or family, this loses every time. The research is really, really clear. So we need to make it so that it feels like it's part of our other priorities, bringing your loved ones, bringing your caregivers. I know there's a lot of you on tonight, taking a walk, with your loved one can be a way to integrate those two priorities so that you going to exercise at the gym doesn't feel like you're not getting to see your family. So make those priorities work together, or at least understand that when you're taking the time to go to the gym or when you're taking the time to work out at home, it is a really amazing adjunct to everything else that you want to have in your life. Friends, feeling good about yourself, feeling good about where you are in your journey. So make it a priority that encompasses everything else that's important to you. All right, quickly, we're going to go through some precautions and some red flags. Again, I can't emphasize enough, your team is here for you. We want to help. Please keep us involved and ask questions. Exercise in a safe space. We know that treatment can affect our balance. Make sure that you're somewhere where you are safe and you're not going to risk a fall. You don't want to get an infection. If you do have any of the following, if you notice your lymphedema is getting worse when you're exercising, those are all things that you need to seek guidance from a professional. There is help, and we can help keep you active. So those are some things that we really, really want you, again, to keep your care team involved. Okay, red flags. These are kind of those hard stop situations where you stop immediately and you call your care team. So if you have a new onset of pain, we don't want you to work through it. That's a hard stop. New onset of swelling, cognitive changes, red or white blood cell counts that are not optimal, shortness of breath, dizziness, all of those things, we need you to make sure that you're okay and you can continue. Real quickly, again, some chemotherapy things to think about. For my mom, chemotherapy, she didn't feel very well. It was hard for her to keep liquid down. It was hard for her to get food down sometimes. And the reason why I bring this up is because when you're trying to increase your activity, you're burning fuel. Food is fuel, water, fuel. If you can't hydrate and fuel your body well, it's going to be really hard for you to have the energy to exercise. So if that's something that's going on with you, talk with your care team, see if there's something that can help make you feel a little bit better, see if they have suggestions on foods that can help keep you energized, because if you want to move, you need to energize your body, and that can be a real problem. Again, neuropathy can be a real issue with treatment, and that can be a big factor with balance. So be very careful. We don't want any falls. So some final thoughts. I love, love, love this photo of my mom. She just got herself some new snowshoes. And so she was all excited to use her snowshoes, which I think is amazing. So final thoughts are these. The benefits of activity are profound, and they are profound along the entire continuum of care, starting even before you begin treatment. It is something that we know from the research has a vast impact, and I wager to say that it should just be part of a treatment plan instead of thought of as an adjunct that might be a good idea. Seek experts along the way and keep your care team involved. That's very important, and I can't emphasize enough, it is never a bother. I love hearing from my patients, and so do your physicians. Call us. Let us know how you're doing. Let us know how we can help you. Include your loved ones in your movement journey. I know for our family, oh, my time on the tennis court with my mom, the walks that we have taken, movement brings people together. Some of our most amazing conversations about life, about this journey, have happened when we are moving together. Bring those priorities together. It makes the journey that much more rich. It all counts. Go at your own pace, and please find something fun. It's much more enjoyable when you're doing something that you're having fun at doing. So with that, here are some resources. Again, this is going to be uploaded onto the MOCA website. I really would like you to be able to find these sources far after this discussion is over. If you haven't got a physical therapist that you're working with and it's something that interests you at this point in our discussion, I do have the website, the APTA, which is the American Physical Therapy Association website. They have a tool that can help you find a physical therapist in your area. So I highly recommend, if you aren't working with a physical therapist, if you're ready for that next stage, but you're not sure how to do it, that is a great resource for you. And with that, I'm going to ask you to bring forward any questions. I'm super excited to hear from you. So here we go.
Danielle, thank
Yes.
you so much. This is just so much great information. I'm taking it all in as I'm listening. So we really appreciate all of that. And let's get started with our Q&A. We have had a lot of questions coming in, which is great.
Oh, yes.
So feel free, we will go and try to cover as many questions as we can through the hour. So if people have more questions, feel free to submit those as well. So this first question is kind of a two-part question. The survivor just finished treatment and is on a maintenance and is trying to get some muscle mass back. But she also asked, do I need to tighten my stomach muscles because of the debulking surgery? And she feels like she needs more support. Is there a program that she should look into, or should she start more slower than most people?
Yeah. So I absolutely love this question. So I really appreciate you for asking this. Um, this is a very important topic with the debulking surgery. Um, it is a really intense surgery, and it cuts through all of your layers of your abdominals. So there are a lot of weaknesses and a lot of dysfunction that can actually develop in your abdominal wall and in your pelvic floor if we don't take care of it correctly. So really, it is my recommendation that you don't go back to doing sit-ups, like traditional sit-ups, anything like that. This is a situation where we need to work on breath work. We need to work on activation of your diaphragm, which is a huge muscle that sits right beneath your rib cage. And that works along with your abdominals to work on really proper form. So if we don't want to develop dysfunction, I highly recommend that people go see, after the debulking surgery, somebody who will work with them, a pelvic floor specialist, a women's health physical therapist that can work with them on the timing and sequence of the breath, the correct way to initiate the deep abdominal layers and the core musculature, the proper way to engage and relax your pelvic floor. Your pelvic floor is extremely important, and it can be very, very dysfunctional. It can be weak. It can be overly tight. So unless you understand the intrinsics of what's really going on, it's very difficult to just give a program of do abdominal exercises. So I highly recommend seeking the care of a professional, and again, either a women's health physical therapist or a women's health pelvic floor specialist. And again, you can use that Choose PT tool that's on the APTA website to help find one. The second part to that question, building muscle. So I am not a dietitian, so I am not, it's a little bit out of my scope of practice, but luckily I was able to contact a dietitian that I work with for a little bit of guidance. Protein is something that gets a little dicey. People have their own beliefs on protein intake, but generally a healthy protein intake is 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So again, that's 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. If you're looking at really putting on some muscle and you're doing consistent strength training activities to build muscle, she said that you could go up to 1 to 1.2 gram per kilogram of body weight. So again, that's 1 to 1.2 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. And, you know, there's a little bit of a misnomer with how much protein we actually need. So you want to be careful. The other recommendation would be if you are looking to start strength training and you're really excited about it and you really want to do that with quite effort, it's not uncommon for our patients to meet with a dietitian and really make sure that they're meeting their caloric intake and they have enough energy to help build muscle.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Danielle.
Hmm.
So the next question, is just a wonderful one. I used to be more active pre-COVID. I find it difficult to stay motivated now watching videos.
Yeah.
Do you have suggestions to help me stay motivated at home?
Oh gosh, that's such a good one because we're all experiencing that, right? So, especially, I don't know if this individual was a gym goer, but like I talked about in my talk, that has some socialization factors that helps keep us motivated. If you were a class goer, the energy there is awesome. And yeah, I agree, the video is not quite the same. So one thing to kind of think about, my friends and I did a Zoom kind of, I mean, I led it, which I think they just laughed at me most of the time, but I was very serious and we had fun. But even doing just exercises with friends over Zoom, so you get that socialization. If you have family members at home, having a time where you can, again, integrate those priorities of having family time and activity time can be a little bit more motivating. Trying an activity that you haven't done before. So if, for example, you haven't done Tai Chi. That might be a fun thing to try, and it's novel. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that novelty really helps keep us engaged in activity. If you like hiking or taking walks, go to a new park, find a new hike. That can be very energizing and motivating as well. So trying something novel can be really fun too.
That's great advice. Absolutely. Now that this kind of you've kind of touched, I think, on maybe what this answer could be, but this person is 2 years post treatment and is just really struggling with weight loss and exercising. And
Yeah.
so again, I guess probably the motivation piece too. But do you have any helpful tips or ideas to get her going?
Yeah, you know, it's really a hard place. And I don't know if this person's experiencing, you know, still factors of fatigue or just not feeling like themselves, because that can be a huge factor too. The biggest thing that I always say to people is number one, start where you're at. Something is always better than nothing. So, you know, even if you're not being consistent with your physical activity, really, you know, one fun thing to try might be some of those exercises that we're going to load up to the MOCA website. They're safe, they're effective, and they can be done throughout the day. So you don't have to, you know, sometimes thinking about doing a 60-minute workout, it feels overwhelming, and
Yeah.
you don't have to do that. So even just saying, okay, today I'm going to set a timer, and every hour or two I'm going to get up and I'm going to do 3 of Danny's exercises, and I'm going to move for 5 to 7 minutes. And you get up and you do that, by the end of the day you have an amazing amount of activity. Making a game out of it can be really fun too. Making a calendar, again, when we talk about motivation, part of that is having a plan. So writing it down, writing down your intent. And again, then going back and writing down, you know, when I got up and I did 5 minutes of movement, I really actually felt great. I could focus better. I was in a better mood. And then that will help keep us motivated, because we can look at our calendar and say, oh, yeah, that really made me feel better. I want to do that again. So that can be a really motivating thing to do as well, just remembering why you enjoyed that activity.
Absolutely, yes. This next question is about steps. So, I mean,
Okay.
we hear a lot about steps. And
Yeah.
so this person is asking, is there anything magic about getting to 10,000 steps a day,
Oh,
7,000 steps a day? What are the
yes.
recommendations?
So that is the magic question, Stephanie, and it is being researched right now.
There you
So
go.
So the 10,000 steps sort of was a number that came out of a weight loss situation, and it was kind of like, okay, we can lose weight, we can maintain weight with if we hit these 10,000 steps. There is a little bit of a debate actually on if we actually need 10,000 steps. 7,000 steps actually is a number that's been thrown out, but that
Okay.
is okay. Well, do we really need 10,000? So here's my recommendation on that, because it's very hard to assess where somebody is at. So my recommendation would be, if you right now, for example, are consistently, again, consistency is key. So it doesn't count if you get 10,000 steps once a week. That's not consistently getting 10,000 steps. So if you're
Yeah.
consistently getting around 3,000 steps per day, what I would recommend to people is that every week they try to bump that up just a little bit. So maybe
Okay.
this week you're at 3,000 steps and you get that done consistently. 5 days a week, you hit it. You're feeling
Yeah.
great about it. That's great. That's where you are. That's fantastic. Again, it all counts. Something is better than nothing. There's no shame in 3,000 steps or less. That's where you're at. So my
Yeah.
recommendation is feel good about where you are and then slowly build. So maybe you get 3,000 steps consistently this week. Next week, let's try for 4 or
Yeah.
3.5. But let's try to build, and let's try to build slowly and consistently. Consistency really, really is the key. But again, that point is, what is the magic number? Well, there's a little bit of a debate on there. Most of the research says we want to be around that 10,000 steps for the most health benefit and weight maintenance. So it's a good number to aim for, but there's no shame in where you are. Slowly build and be excited about where you are right now.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Danielle. Another question. My major surgery was in 2015. I'm disappointed I wasn't told to
Yeah.
contact a physical therapist. Is it too late?
No,
Okay.
never. It's never too late. Absolutely not. And this is something, obviously I'm a little biased because I am a physical therapist, but this is actually, thank you for asking this, whoever asked this, because this is a really, really good point. Number one, it's never too late. Never. And it's never too late for, going back to the other question about the debulking surgery and cutting through the abdominal wall, learning again how to breathe, how to coordinate your breath and your pelvic floor, all of that, never too late.
Okay.
So you can absolutely go now. The other thing is that this is a really good point, because I would love for people to start advocating to see a physical therapist when they need help with their physical activity. This really is our area of expertise, especially when it comes to other conditions and other things that you're dealing with. You know, just because you have ovarian cancer doesn't also mean you don't have a hip that's hurting you, or a knee that's hurting you, or a back that's hurting you. And if your back's hurting you, do you really want to move? So you need care. And
Yeah.
so this is something, and I'm so, so glad that this question was asked, because I do think it is really important to be an advocate for your care. And if
Yeah.
you have something that you want to do or you have questions about, ask to get a referral to a physical therapist.
Absolutely. Thank you for that piece of advice and whoever asked that question as well. I would
Yeah.
like two more questions so we can try to get through those and then we can wrap it up. I know we've got maybe just 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Um, how are vigorous and moderate exercises defined?
Okay. So um, the PDF will be uploaded to the
Okay.
MOCA website. So there was a list that I went through with moderate versus vigorous. Um, on my slide, I used something to measure that is called the rate of perceived exertion. I used the Cleveland Clinic scale, and that will be on the PDF as well, so you can refer to that. It's a 0 to 10 scale. Moderate exercise is you're working hard, you're breathing hard. You can still talk with your friend, but you are probably at an increased heart rate. You're breathing hard. You're at a brisk walk. Um, that's about 4 to 6 out of 10. Vigorous exercise, you are working hard. You don't want to talk to your friend. You're concentrating on what you're doing. If you've heard the term interval training, where you're working at a very, very high level and then you're coming back down to more of a base level, back up, down, and you're just kind of going up and down, up and down, up and down into this vigorous, you're working close to your max heart rate. So you're working hard. You're at about a 7 to 9 out of 10 on that rate of perceived exertion scale.
Okay.
Now, one caveat with this is, again, always check with your care team before you just go off and do some vigorous exercise. But the other thing I do want to mention is the CDC had a really, really great, vast amount of information that really nailed down for you a lot of different activities and where they would fall into those categories. So if you go to the cdc.gov and look under exercise for adults, they have some really, really great information there that'll nail down specific exercises. So if you're wondering, oh, when I ride my bike around the lake, is that considered moderate or is it considered vigorous? The answer is it depends how you're riding it. But the CDC has a lot of really more specifics about that. So use that as your resource. It's a really good site.
Perfect. And thank you for sharing the resources throughout too. And we will have these all available. So the final question, a lot of people have been telling this person who asked the question that tennis or pickleball isn't good exercise, but can we consider this a good option?
Well, let me tell you, when I was getting just really beaten horribly by all my mom and her tennis friends, I will tell you, I was working very hard. I was probably in the vigorous category. They could just kind of lightly tap it, and I was running all over the court ridiculously. So yes, tennis is amazing. I think it's a great activity. The only caveat would be, if you have any issues with balance or neuropathy, that's where, you could explore a pickleball is played on a smaller court. And so singles tennis, if you have some neuropathies, if you have some balance challenges, just be cautious. I never like to say don't do anything because I think, you have to make that decision for yourself. But absolutely, I think tennis is amazing. And my mom's been doing it for years and she looks fabulous. So I say go for it.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Danielle,
Yeah.
so much. And for everyone who has joined us tonight, I know, our recording will be on our website tomorrow. I do want to give you a thank you from MOCA, you and your family. I don't know if people have noticed in some of the pictures, but the Barb's beanies, which you guys have made for our MOCA Cares kits for ovarian cancer survivors, you guys have donated and sewed so many Barb's beanies. And so we just want to say thank you guys for your support and for the wonderful beanies, are the feedback we get, and it's just so heartfelt. So thank you for that.
Well, it's definitely out of love for sure, every ounce of it. And thank you all for having me tonight. And thank you to all the survivors and their family and their friends. You are in my heart, and I have walked through this journey, and it's a journey.
Yes, absolutely. You have been wonderful, Danielle, and we'll close it for the night. Like I said, we will have a recording on our website so you can watch this presentation again. And we hope you'll join us next month over the lunch hour for our first Lunch and Learn program, which is on March 24th, and you can register for that at mnovarian.org. So thank you for being here with us, and I hope everyone has a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.